we're all concerned about crime. And we have had headlines that said that crime is not on the rise, but we all know that it is. And actually, Ken W. Good wants to address this because the FBI quietly revised their violent crime statistics. And Ken Good, let me give you a little bit of background on him. He graduated from Simmons University, and he is a part of in 1989, he received his law degree from Texas Tech. He's a member of the Texas Tech Law Review. He's argued cases before the Supreme Court and the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals, along with numerous other appeals. And he is Texas bail attorney, and wanted to talk with him about this. Ken, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
We have, in fact, Colorado is 47th in the nation regarding violent crime, and or I would say safety. We're near the bottom. We're third from the bottom as far as safety, and we know that there's crime that is occurring. The FBI, we'd seen headlines that crime wasn't that bad, but then they quietly revised their violent crime statistics. So talk to me about that, Ken Good.
Well, we've had this debate for the last 2 years or more about whether crime was increasing, and one side of the debate has been saying for years, no, crime's not increasing. Just look at the FBI statistics. It's just a perception over reality issue, and you're just wrong. And now, weeks before the election, the FBI has quietly revised their statistics, and that's the only argument that they've been relying upon. Everything else, the CDC says that homicides are up. There's the DOJ does an annual survey that shows crime is up substantially, and so for the FBI to quietly revise their statistics to show that crime has actually increased, that's not only significant, it is game-changing, because that's the only argument that the side saying crime is not increasing has relied upon. And it's important for this reason. If they were to admit that crime has increased, then that blows a hole in all of these reforms that they've been saying, we can do this and crime will not increase. And so if they cannot admit, they can never admit it, because if they do, then the public will punish them for what they put us through. And that's what needs to happen.
And punish them means at the ballot box, yes?
Absolutely. Vote for people who say crime is increasing and we're going to address it, instead of the people that say, no, crime's not increasing. That's just a perception over reality issue. No, crime's been increasing, and these people knew the policies they were putting in place would increase crime. They just thought that their supporters wouldn't care, and that would carry the day. Now, think about it. 2 years ago, the Republicans got control of the House and Congress, mostly because of the crime issue in New York. And I think it's going to be worse this time, or the election will be more favorable to crime candidates than people saying crime is not increasing. You see articles about it all the time in New York and across the country, Colorado as well.
Well, and what I'm also seeing, though, is there are politicians on both sides of the aisle that are trying to downplay it. For example, we've got this situation in Aurora where there have been several apartment buildings that have been taken over by the Aragua gangs. And in fact, a headline I saw yesterday is that this Venezuelan gang, has decided to make Denver its headquarters. And that crime is going to then seep out into some of these suburbs that have thought that they would be insulated from this crime. And that is not the case, because what will happen is they're going to crime goes where they think that there will be good targets. And so that is going to occur. And so we saw that with Aurora. But we're seeing politicians on both sides of the aisle try to say that it's not as bad as it sounds. And as J.D. Vance said, one apartment building is one too many. It should be zero.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I think the problem with that is I think that's an incumbent versus non-incumbent issue, because, until President Trump and J.D. Vance started talking about these gangs, you did not hear one word about this. I did a podcast with someone who wrote an article about this very issue. And so I just posted the article on my Facebook page. It was immediately deleted by Facebook. I thought, well, that was silly. I mean, this is just news. So I posted again. It immediately got deleted again by Facebook. So I would argue that the issue of gangs and cartels taking over apartments and stuff like that has been edited out of the news until President Trump and J.D. Vance blew the pants off of it and started talking about it. And then suddenly we're now hearing about it. And the audacity that we would first hear about it as, oh, you're just overplaying it. We don't have that. This is just a handful of apartment complexes. And like you pointed out, J.D. Vance's response just pointed out the absurdity of it. And so I would argue it's just another example of perception versus reality. That's the response. But I think on this issue, it is so damaging for all politicians that are currently in office that I think you're seeing incumbents trying to downplay it because they don't have any other response for it.
Okay, that's an excellent point. And how do we fix this, Ken Good?
Well, we know how to fight crime. I mean, we teach classes on it in criminology. The problem is all these bail reform issues that we've tried across the country and we're now rolling back, they have no support in science. They have no support in criminology. What we have found through time is that these advocacy groups have multiple groups. So they have the people that are giving the money for candidates, and then they have and once you're elected, you go to seminars set up by another group that's supported by them, and it's a quid pro quo. This is what you will support. And then they have another group that does research that will tell them what they're going to do. This supports what you're going to do. And then they have another group that does PR, that here's the press releases that you're going to issue to say this is what you're going to do based on this research. And it's all based on lies, and they cook the books. And so we have to go back to do what we know works. And we have to hold people accountable. And it sounds silly, but it starts with we have to make people go to court. Because if you don't make people go to court, then in our criminal cases, we have to put them on hold until they come back. And a lot of times in our misdemeanors, there's a time limit. So if they don't come back, they dismiss the case. So there's this huge pressure to dismiss cases because of the backlogs that are so huge. So dismissal is de facto decriminalization. Decriminalization is a green light. That's what defendants or criminals see it, is to commit more crime. So it starts with as simple as we got to make people go to court, and we got to hold them accountable if they don't, and then the rest of it will fall in line because we know what we need to do to fight crime. We have just been told for the last few years that we can't do it, and we have to unleash our criminal justice system. We have to untie the hands of the judges and let them do their jobs. And then if the judges refuse to do it because we've elected some people that have drank the coffee or drank the tea, then we need to replace them with people who know how to address crime. So,
Ken W. Good, you are a bail attorney in Texas, and each of the states are different. But we have questions in Colorado about retaining judges. And we don't know that much about the judges. And then we also have a question on the ballot about judicial review. And in my voter's guide, which people can download at KimMonson.com, as I read it regarding the commission that would do judicial review, it looked to me that like the people that would be appointed to the commission, all roads would lead to the governor. And of course, at this particular point in time, we've got a radical governor. And I just think that's a bad idea, whether or not it's a Democrat or a Republican. I don't think that we should have these commissions that are going to be appointed, or people that are appointed by the Supreme Court who is appointed by the governor. I just don't think that's a good idea. But a friend of mine told me a story about Some friends of hers had it was with a contractor. They were building a business, and it still has not been resolved yet, and they're in court. And the judge took 3 months off. And so my friend's friend voted yes on this Judicial Review Commission because she's so frustrated. This is crazy to me that a judge could take 3 months off. Does that happen in Texas?
We're having some problems with judges like that. I think the best example in Texas is, we have a docket first thing in the morning, and by noon they've resolved their cases or continued the ones they didn't resolve, and so by lunch, the judge is done for the day instead of setting another docket for the afternoon. And so, being a judge is not a part-time job. The problem we're having right now is politics has just seeped into our criminal justice system so badly. And politics is always in everything. I understand that, but it is really bad. Up until, I would say, the last 6 or 7 years, maybe, law and order, crime is a nonpartisan issue. Everybody agrees that we should not have crime. We're kind of past that at this moment in time. And so I have been encouraging people. I know we're in this identity politics issue era, and so fine, then let's vote on crime for once. Because if you vote on crime one time, then your politician suddenly will morph into a law and order politician. And then we can go back to all the other identity politics fights we want to have. But we need to get both parties back to being law and order. Can you imagine that in the United States right now, 50% of all murder victims are young black males? And by and large, the murderers of those people are young black males. And somehow in this criminal justice reform, bail reform debate, we have decided to favor the young black murderers over the young black victims. And that's not okay. That shouldn't be okay with anybody.
Well, safe neighborhoods and safe communities are foundational for people to be able to thrive and prosper. And when we don't have that, when people are fearful, and it just changes everything. So let's continue the discussion when we come back. I'm talking with Ken W. Good. He is a Texas bail attorney and really knowledgeable on this particular issue of crime. And it's on everybody's mind, that is for sure. This is super interesting. Now, the FBI revised these crime numbers. People have also reached out to me and said that there is a lot of violent crime, a lot of crime that is not reported now because it takes a long time for the police to respond because we have not been supporting them. It's a dangerous job. But what about these crimes that are not reported?
Well, let's talk about closure rates on criminal cases. That's something that we track. And so as closure rates go down, so like in Houston, Texas, I think there's a third to a half of all open murder cases. They haven't even arrested somebody. That has an impact on the public. And so look at California where they decriminalized theft under $950. So that has an impact on the public. Why would I report something to the police? And even worse, if these silly bail reform measures that they have taken into effect in these urban areas where they can't even hold somebody, reporting a crime could have the impact of putting you under the spotlight with the very people you just filed criminal charges on because they're not going to be held. And so that's the actual natural result of some of these reforms is obviously the public loses faith with law enforcement and then starts to become fearful of reporting crimes. And nowhere has this been more severe than in our domestic violence situations. Before reform, there was little faith in the criminal justice system, but post these reforms in our urban areas where they're starting to roll them back, you can't rely upon the criminal justice system. You have to first figure out your support system, how you're going to survive and provide for you and your children. And the criminal justice system is almost an afterthought to them now because they can't rely upon our law enforcement anymore.
Well, Then we have another question on our Colorado ballot. And what it is it's Proposition KK, which is an additional excise tax on all firearms and ammunition, which I am recommending a no vote on that. Because,
Absolutely.
Ken, as I've thought about it, with just what we're describing, higher crime and then unreported crime as well, that I think about that mom who may be in a dangerous neighborhood. She can't move out of it. She's got her children there. She wants to protect them. She wants to have a firearm, and she's just rubbing nickels to try to make ends meet. And this would make it more expensive for her to have a firearm and ammunition so that she could protect herself, because each of us is our first line of defense against the bad actors.
Absolutely. And this is a perfect example of where the government does not want you to give you the right to a firearm. But in so many examples that we're seeing today, they are either do not have the resources, the manpower, or they're unwilling to protect you in dangerous situations. And so why? I mean, I've said this many times. Please, government, if you can't do it, if you don't have the ability to do it, at least give me the right to own a gun so that I can do it myself. And this tax is an impediment to people being able to protect themselves. And as you've said, we're the last, maybe the first line, but at least it's the very last line. If I can't rely upon anyone else, let me rely upon myself. And so don't put up any obstacle that's going to prevent that.
And so, again, that's why definitely a no on Proposition KK. And it seems like the people that want to prevent, I call them PBIs, politicians, bureaucrats, and interested parties. It seems like the PBIs that have been soft on crime are also the same group that is actively out there trying to prevent law-abiding citizens from being able to keep and bear firearms and ammunition.
Absolutely, and there's a specific reason for that, because, as you pointed out, if you don't have public safety is one of the foundations of our society. So if you don't have public safety, you don't have a society. And so the public will demand it. And if the government will not provide it, they will provide it themselves. So the reason why they are prosecuting people that are out there helping is they're trying to prevent us to get to that vigilante justice position. But the way you prevent that is by providing it, not by prosecuting the people who step in. And so it's misguided, but it is it's almost like waiting to strike a match, because the public demands public safety, because without it, we don't have a society.
And it's important to connect that dot, because it seems, Ken, good that there are those that are really trying to destroy our society, and they're in positions of power at this particular point in time. And people are paying attention.
I would say to that, it's a coalition. And so part of that coalition is exactly what you said. But to get to a majority, some of that coalition is just well-intentioned. And so if we can point out to the members of the coalition that are open-minded that this is all misguided, then it all falls apart. And that's what we're trying to do this election, is to point out to the reasonable people who are parts of that coalition the destruction that they're doing to our society, and that we don't have to. It can be turned around, and we know what to do. And so please, vote crime this election.
And it's easy to actually, if you do a little bit of research in the presidential election during the Summer of Love of 2020, there's reports that Kamala Harris was actually in support of the people that were destroying neighborhoods. And so if you're going to vote on safe neighborhoods, vote to prevent crime, Kamala Harris is not your candidate, right?
Absolutely. She made a post on X calling for people to contribute to the Minnesota Bail Fund, which then raised millions of dollars and has been very destructive through its actions thereafter. States have taken action to limit charitable bail funds, which I would have never thought possible, because they have found that there's no one languishing in jail, and so they're still looking to bond people out. They're bonding out very dangerous people who are career criminals who need to stay in jail. And so those are direct result of her actions. And you look at these things, and you look at her, and she's been a candidate for 4 months, and she's kind of repudiated all of her previous decisions. But her post on X supporting, getting anyone out of jail for free is still up there. And we need to remember that when we go vote, if we haven't voted already.
Okay. And again, safe communities are foundational for people to thrive and prosper, to go after their hopes and dreams. And that is why this is such an important election. We're just about out of time. Kim, this has been super interesting. I'm talking with Texas bail attorney Ken W. Good. What's your final thought that you'd like to leave with our listeners?
In the last two national elections, crime has been one of the most important issues, but one party has overcome that with identity politics, and they're trying to do it again. But the immigration issue is so intertwined with the crime issue, and it's reached a tipping point. And, we've been through this cycle before in the 60s where we thought we were safe, and then we were more forgiving in criminal laws, and then crime started to go increasing, and we had a backlash. And I think we're going through that same cycle again. And I would encourage people, if you vote for the candidate who will fight crime, then all the candidates in the next election will be pro-safety, and we can go back to our everyday identity political fights. But we need to get where all of our parties are like they were, 10 years ago. We all agree that we can't have crime. That's where we need to get to, and I encourage people to vote for the candidates that support law and order this election.
Well, Ken W. Good, fascinating. Thank you so much. Greatly appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.